Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. I wanted to talk about a couple of fighters who, in my opinion, their careers have so far at least been rather disappointing. And those two fighters are Demetrius Andrade and Gervonta Tank Davis. And I'm not comparing the trajectory of their careers. I think there are similarities, but there are probably different reasons why neither man has sort of fulfilled the potential a lot of us thought they had, because both these fighters clearly have a lot of talent and have in the past, promised an awful lot, but sometimes flattered to deceive. Sometimes they've been, instigators of their own downfall. On other occasions, they've, I don't know, maybe injuries kept them out, or circumstances, promotional issues perhaps. But for whatever the reason, it's still disappointing that both these guys have not done what we thought they would. So let's start with Demetrius Andrade, okay? So you're talking about a guy who's now in his mid-30s. He's 31 wins, no defeats, no draws, 19 knockouts. And he really has looked the part for years, in terms of just natural talent. He won his first title back in 2013. I mean, that's nigh on 10 years ago. It was the back end of, all right, we'll call it 9 years ago. That was against Varnes Martirosyan, won a split decision over 12 rounds. He then defended it against Brian Rose. This was the WBO World Super Welterweight title. The win over Martirosyan was for a vacant title. But you pick up a title, you think, okay, this is it. This is my key to the door. I'm going to now move on and do, more things. I'm going to build on this. This is my calling card. And he then picked up, I don't know what happened with it was the WBO title that he won. He made some defences. Let me get this right now, I'm trying to think. And then eventually he won the WBA title, which was, I think, against Jack Culcay. I might be getting this wrong, but he went from the WBO to the WBA, still at super welterweight. And he had wins over, the quality of the opposition isn't brilliant. It was like Willie Nelson, Atlanta's Fox. But people were saying, what about the Charlos? What about maybe a move up to middleweight to fight Golovkin? And he was kind of treading water, with wins over people like, he did win actually a world middleweight title. He won the WBO middleweight title. And I think that was against Sulecki. Which was a unanimous decision, I think. But so he's winning these, or did he win it against Sulecki, or was it? Oh, he definitely fought Sulecki. Whoever he won it against, it was the WBO middleweight title, and he made several defences. But still, there were no legacy fights. Still, there were no fights where you were thinking, okay, this guy has really made a statement. He's now, at the pinnacle of his powers, and he's ready to take on the elite fighters. So, wins over people like Luke Keeler, I mean, Liam Williams, Jason Quigley. I mean, these guys, he seemed to have fought a lot of British guys, didn't he? A couple of Irish guys thrown in. But these are not the opponents we wanted for him. So as a result, 9 years after winning his world title, and now in his mid-30s, he's got a fight coming up against Dimon Nicholson, who I don't know anything about. He's got a record of 26 wins, 4 defeats, I think one draw. He's been stopped twice. So you would expect Andrade to stop this guy. But again, this is another fight that no one's really that interested in. We wanted to see him in against a Charlo. Either of the Charlo twins, either of them, down at super welter or now middleweight. He's been middleweight for quite a long time now, Andrade, for some years. And also, he didn't fight at all in 2022. I mean, why not? The guy's in his 30s. He should be getting a move on. So this is fighting all these B- guys. It doesn't build a legacy, and it doesn't give you any career-defining fights. So I don't know why he's done this. Has he ducked people? Well, he was meant to fight Zach Parker, and we know what happened with Zach Parker against Matey. What's his name? His name slipped my mind now, but the English guy. Parker ended up quitting. And Andrade, that was a winnable fight for Andrade, but he turned it down. He avoided Zach Parker. And now you've got, you know, I mean, a win there could have put him in line for a shot at Golovkin. He could still get a shot at Golovkin, but he's not doing anything. So a very disappointing career so far for Demetrius Andrade. He's flattered to deceive, and he's got the skills, he's got the talent. There's no doubt about that. But it's such a shame that he didn't, you know, insist on, I want those fights, call out people, you know, create a stir, a stink, make sure that the other champs know I want unification fights. Very, very. Ryder was the guy, of course, who beat Zach Parker. His name slipped my mind a moment ago, but now Ryder has got an interim belt. You know, that could have been Andrade's. But anyway, let's move on to Tank Davis, because Tank's younger. He's still only 28, so he's got plenty of time to build a legacy, win more belts, have career-defining fights, do all the things that Andrade hasn't done. He's still got time. Okay. But it's still been disappointing, perhaps for different reasons. Okay, so let's just go him through his career. You know, he won a title. He won the IBF super featherweight title against, I think it was Jose Pedraza. He then came to Britain, which some of us will remember. He fought Liam Walsh, complete mismatch. Walsh was undefeated. He had like 21, 22 fights undefeated, but he was no match for Tank, and he got done in 3 rounds. And then Tank moves on. He gets... he fails to make weight against Francisco Fonseca, but stops him in 8. They fight anyway, and then he wins. That, by the way, the original, his first title was the IBF super featherweight title. He then won the WBA super featherweight title against Jesus Coelho, and then he makes, you know, defenses, but again, it's a similar thing. No real defining fights, no career defining fights. I mean, he beat an ancient Yuriorkis Gamboa, but we stopped him in the 12th round, which, I mean, I thought that would be over much quicker than it was. And Gamboa, you know, he was down, I think, 3 times in various rounds, early rounds, middle rounds, and late rounds, but he actually gave it a go. He's got some highlight reel knockouts, Tank has, like against Leo Santa Cruz, but how small is Santa Cruz? I know he's a 3-weight world champ, and he was giving Tank problems early on, you know, he was quite nimble, and, you know, he's got a lot of skills, Leo Santa Cruz. That was for the WBA super featherweight title and the WBA lightweight title. I don't know how that works. So both the WBA titles were on the line against Santa Cruz, a much smaller man. No way is he anywhere near a lightweight. Super feather was definitely him maxing out. And Tank flattened him after having some problems, knocked him out. It's a very picturesque highlight reel knockout. But again, against a guy who's much smaller. And then he fought Barrios and Isaac Cruz, which we know about, and he stopped Barrios late. He won a decision over Isaac Cruz. Some people said Isaac Cruz won that fight. I don't believe that. I thought Tank edged it, although Cruz put up a good fight. No argument. You know, could you make a case for him winning? Yeah, sure. I personally thought Tank edged it, but very close fight. Not a robbery at all, but close fight. And then Tank, you know, he's fighting Rowley. He fought Rowley Romero last time out. That was his only fight in 2022 against Rowley. 6-round stoppage. Rowley was giving him problems. And then, you know, the finish was beautiful. He feints and Rowley moves in. Beautifully positioned from Tank. Excellent punch. Flattens him. Okay. So that's Tank's resume so far. But where are those career-defining fights? Where's the Lomachenko? You know, what about Teofimo Stevenson? I mean, he's moved up now, but when he was at lightweight, what about that? I didn't hear much smoke about. I didn't hear much. I didn't hear bells and whistles about that potential fight. Shakur Stevenson, what about him moving up to lightweight? Why not fight him? You know, if you want to build a legacy and not just make money, you've got to fight the best. There's no doubt about it. Look back at all the fighters we respect and we remember. They fought the very, very best. And it's a shame that some of these fighters don't realise that. I know it's called prize fighting, and you want to make a lot of money as soon as possible. And all respect to boxers for doing that, but you gotta. Sometimes, you know, the money and the legacy go hand in hand, and by fighting the very best, you know, like the Four Kings back in the 80s. You know, they were fighting each other. They were losing. They were winning. They were, you know, didn't matter. They made a shit ton of money, and they also built legacies that people, you know, 30, 40 years later, probably 60, 70, 80 years later, will remember if you're a boxing fan. Just like we remember, you know, the Henry Armstrongs and the Robinsons, if you go way back further, the Jack Johnsons and the Sam Langfords and people like that. And your Willie Peps, and we remember them because they had fantastic resumes. Now, with Davis, of course, unlike Andrade, Davis is, from what I gather, from what I've read, he's a street guy. He comes from the hood, or whatever you want to call it, whatever the modern vernacular is. He's a street guy. He's had a very underprivileged background. You don't cover yourself in tattoos like he does, and at such a young age. And he still seems to be hanging out with, gangsters or wannabe gangsters. I don't know anything about it. I mean, I don't know why he does this. Surely I'd have thought you would be looking for a way out. But having said that, when you look at the psychology of people, they cling to what they know. They think better the devil you know. They're interested in their roots. Roots are a big part of all human beings, of our identity. And if his roots were with, the gang culture or whatever it is, I don't pretend to understand it, but whatever it is, if that's his roots, then those are hard to dig up. And to reinvent yourself totally from, the roots upwards is very, very difficult. Mike Tyson couldn't do it with all the talent he had. And I remember back watching Tyson when he was up and coming, thinking the only man who can beat this guy is himself. And he did beat himself. Because he just couldn't leave it behind. He couldn't leave that street life behind. Davis seems to have that element to him. He's got in trouble recently with the issue with his girlfriend. I'm not going to go into it, but I think he's been released. But and she's withdrawn the charges and all this. But it doesn't bode well. And Davis has now got a fight coming up. This is going to be supposedly on the 7th of January. I don't think it's been cancelled yet. It might be. That's against Hector Luis Garcia, who's a good fighter. Hector Luis Garcia is undefeated. He's got 16 wins, no defeats. And very, very impressive against Chris Colbert. Is it Colbert or Colbert? I would say Colbert, but maybe it's Colbert. Who was fancied to beat him, and he beat him easily. He beat Colbert easily on a 12-round decision. Had him over in the 7th. Colbert, you'll know him from all that. He comes in very sort of garish colours. His hair's dyed and all this business. He was fancied to beat Hector Luis Garcia and clearly didn't. He was more or less outclassed. And as a result, Garcia gets the Davis fight. Davis has also had problems with promotional thing. The Mayweather thing. He wants to leave, then he doesn't. Then he wants to definitely go to pastures new. And then, no, I might sign a new contract. So all this stuff with Mayweather and Leonard Ellaby. What's he going to do? Look, if you take a street kid, a guy who's not that well educated, a guy who has those sort of that sort of gangster mentality, and you suddenly hand him huge amounts of money, give him an element of fame, surround him with women, jewelry, all that business. How do they handle it? How can they be expected to handle something like that without advice? And if you're looking for advice with street guys, that advice is going to probably be coming from a very different place from if you're looking for advice with, say, objective advisors, for example, maybe lawyers or people who treat you as a client and therefore want to maximize your profits and look after your money and so on. Davis seems to be like someone who might well end up in prison unless he cuts the ties, and it's possible he could do that. But like I say, when your roots are strong, I mean, very, very strong, and psychologically it's extremely difficult to dig them up and then replant yourself somewhere else. Very, very difficult indeed. So Davis is, again, his career has been disappointing, just like Andrade's, but perhaps for different reasons. But he does have time to turn it around. He's only 28. Andrade, what is Andrade, 34, 35? Yeah. So I just think it's a shame that those two fighters haven't yet maximised their talents and haven't given us the great fights, the legacy fights that we were hoping for. But what do you think? Leave your comments below. What do you think about these two guys? They're both fighting over the weekend or next weekend. So I expect them both to win their respective fights, and maybe do it spectacularly. I don't know. But sometimes with people who are troubled, like Gervonta Davis, the ring is the safest place, of course. That's what Mike Tyson used to say. But anyway, leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. Hit the subscribe button if you're new to the channel. That would help us out a great deal. And of course, thanks for your time as always. We will speak again soon. Bye bye for now.